will it make any difference at all? Well, Sir Keir Starmer joins me now for his New Year Leader interview.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did the Prime Minister break the law?
I think he broke the law. I think he's as good as admitted that he broke the law. And after all, Downing Street has now apologised to the Queen for some of the parties that have gone on. And I know that the government's holding position is let's all wait for the Sue Gray report. But I think it's pretty obvious what's happened. There's industrial-scale partying that's been going on at Downing Street. Not much of it is really denied, and I think that the public have made up their mind. I think the facts speak for themselves. I think the Prime Minister broke the law. I think he then lied about what had happened because, and this compounds the situation. When I first challenged the Prime Minister just about 6 or 7 weeks ago in Parliament about when the first allegations were coming out, he stood at the dispatch box and said, "I've been assured there were no parties." So that was his position. Then what happened was there was the Allegra video came out back at the dispatch box, so I challenged him again, at which point the Prime Minister said, "I'm furious. I've just found out about these parties. I'm furious." And then, of course, last week, it emerged that he himself was at the party, or one of the parties, in May 2020. And his third defence is, I was there, but I didn't realise it was a party. And there was a little bit of detail he gave in that answer, which is crucially important. He said at the dispatch box, had I appreciated, I would have got everybody back in. So after half an hour, he realised, as he was sort of kicking around the bottles in the Downing Street garden, that there was a party. So, and he said he should have got people in. How does that fit with his first defence, there were no parties?
Well, you're talking about it as a lawyer.
That he was furious. No, but
I know you are talking about it as a lawyer with your lawyer's hat on as well. And are the police right to wait, then, for Sue Gray's report?
But just
if you say he's broken the law, are the police right to wait? Are the police right to wait?
Just let me finish this point and I'll come straight to that. The public are angry that there were the parties, but they're also angry that he's lied about them. So the two go together.
Right to wait?
Well, I think that once Sue Gray has come to her findings, so she will set out all the facts. She's very well respected. I think that all of those should be passed to the police to look at. But I don't go along with this idea that we've all got to wait somehow. I think it's blindingly obvious what has happened. I think that the public have made a mind.
Why do we have to wait? Well, you're prejudging the report, though, aren't they? Why did they have to wait? The police have to wait for Sue Gray's report, but you're prejudging it.
Well, they've already apologised to the Queen. If they didn't do anything wrong, what have they apologised for?
So I go back to my original point. Why are the police not investigating it already?
Well, I just think the sensible thing now, if Sue Gray's report is next week, as you say, and I don't know whether it will be. I mean, the problem is every time she gets the final chapter, there's more allegations and she has to do more work. But those findings should be handed to the police. But, we don't. The facts speak for themselves, and the country has made up its mind. And we've got
if Sue Gray next week, whenever she comes back with her report, if she comes back and says that the Prime Minister has not done anything, the Prime Minister has not done anything knowingly wrong, will you retract your call for him to resign? Will you accept that?
I don't think she will.
But that's what you think. But
just hear me out, because I think what she will do is to establish the facts. So she will say, having interviewed whoever she's interviewed, etc., this is what happened on this day, this is what happened on the next day, this is who was there as far as I could work it out. So she will set out the facts and
if the facts say that he has not done anything knowingly wrong, will you withdraw your call for him to resign?
I don't think that she has the remit to come to a finding on whether the rules were breached or whether anyone's committed a criminal offence.
But if she does, we don't know what her report is going to say, but if she were to find that the Prime Minister had not done anything knowingly wrong, would you withdraw your call for him to resign?
Sophie, I'm not just playing the lawyer here, it's very important. Her remit is to find the facts. Whether they breach the rule is for somebody else to. She is not going to decide whether it was a criminal offence. I'm as certain as I can be about that. And therefore, anybody who's waiting for that report to find out whether the government or the Prime Minister broke the rules is not going to find it in that report, because it will set out the facts. But we don't need that report. But you have prejudged
that in a sense, haven't you? Because you're waiting for her, yet you've called for him to resign. You're waiting for her report. This is what all I'm asking is, if she says he hasn't done anything wrong, the Prime Minister personally, he didn't realise, or whatever she says, would you then withdraw your call for him to resign?
No, I don't. I'm clear in my own mind that he's broken the rules, broken the law. He's apologised. They've apologised to the Queen, and I don't need the Sue Gray report. But I'm not doing Sue Gray down. I know Sue Gray. She's a woman of great integrity and great respect, and everybody who knows her says the same thing about her. But if you look at her remit, it is to establish the facts. And so she will say, this is what happened, this is when it happened, this is who was there. But I think it's extremely unlikely that she is going to start saying, the Prime Minister or anybody else committed a criminal offence. She's not going to do that.
It's a big call for you to stand there and say he must resign. If he doesn't, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep asking for him to resign until there's a next general election?
Well, I've been prompted many, many times to call for the Prime Minister to resign.
I know, and you haven't done it.
I've always resisted, but we've reached a point, and this is the important thing. The Prime Minister has degraded the office of Prime Minister, and he has lost all authority, not only in his own party, but in the country. And therefore, when he tries to persuade the public about how they should behave during the rest of the pandemic, he won't be taken seriously. And it's not just the pandemic. There's you know, at the moment there are Russian troops in Ukraine. We've got energy bills and we've got the NHS. So he's lost authority. We are a country.
You know what I'm going to ask?
Well, no, but just let me finish, because I have decided to make this call. It's a very important call. I waited, but we're now a country paralysed by the weakness of the Prime Minister, and that's why, in the national interest, he has to go.
Have you broken COVID rules?
No, I haven't.
So what is that photograph that a lot of people will have seen, has been on the front pages? It's taken last year, end of April, beginning of May. Just explain what that was.
Happily. I was in a constituency office just days before the election. We were very busy. We were working in the office. And we stopped for something to eat, and then we carried on working. That is the long, the short of it. No party, no breach of the rules, and absolutely no comparison with the Prime Minister.
But there were rules in place. This was Step 2 guidelines at the time. No person may participate in a gathering in the Step 2 area which consists of 2 or more people and takes place indoors unless it's reasonably necessary for work purposes.
We were in the office, the constituency office. It was days before the election. We were very busy. We were working. At some point, some food turned up. We stopped, we had our food, and then we carried on working. That is not a breach of the rules. It's not a party, and it is no comparison to the Prime Minister.
Drinking a beer, is that reasonably necessary for work purposes?
We'd stopped to eat a takeaway whilst we were working in the office, and then we carried on. This was, just to put it in context, this was about a few days before the May elections. We were really busy. We'd been at it all day on Zoom calls. We were doing members' calls from that very office. We stopped because food arrived, and then we carried on.
There were rules in place, and the guidance, the workplace guidance that was in place at the time. Participants should physically attend meetings only where reasonably necessary. There should not be any sharing of food and drink by staff who do not share a household.
Well, Sophie, trying to persuade anybody that stopping to have some food when you're in the office all day working is a breach of the rules is just not going to wash. And it shows just how far the Conservatives are sinking, that they're trying to pretend there's some sort of comparison between this and the industrial-scale partying that the Prime Minister's been up to.
But that photograph of the Prime Minister on the terrace at Downing Street, Dominic Cummings is there, the cheese and wine photograph. Why is that any different? That is an office. We can't hear what they were saying. They say it was a meeting. You say that was a meeting. Why is that any different?
Well, people will look at the photos and make their own minds up. But I think that there is simply no comparison.
That is my point. People are making their own minds up on photographs, aren't they? And they were having cheese and wine, they say. They were having a work meeting like you were. They were outside, which actually is safer in terms of the virus than being inside drinking beer with colleagues.
But Sophie, I've explained we were in the office. It was days before the election. We were working really hard. At some point in the evening, a takeaway arrived and we stopped and we ate it. That is the long and the short of it. Not a party, not a breach of the rules, and no comparison with the Prime Minister.
So you have accepted that drinking was OK within the guidelines at the time. Where do you draw the line?
Well, the line is drawn in the rules. And the Prime Minister broke the rules.
I've just shown you. I've just told you what the rules. I mean, that is the point, isn't it? The rules were great. It's difficult. The rules weren't great, but I mean, how they've been interpreted.
It's not a question of how they've been interpreted. It was perfectly lawful to meet for work, which is what we were doing. The party that was put to the Prime Minister on Wednesday happened because an invitation was sent to 100 people saying, let's have some socially distant drinks in the garden and bring your own booze. There is simply no comparison, and anybody who's trying to make the comparison is really just sinking in this mire. We've had industrial scale parting from the Prime Minister, and then we've had his 3 defences and the lies that have gone behind those defences. It simply can't be right for the Prime Minister to say he was assured there were no parties. By the way, who assured him? His principal private secretary sent out the invites, or somebody else? So then he says he's furious about the parties. Now he says he was at the party, but he didn't realise.
So all that happening whilst we've been living under strict rules, strict restrictions. Is it right now that all restrictions should be dropped in the next 10 days?
Look, I think the sooner we can lift the final restrictions, the better. I think that's what the whole country wants. I think it's important that we're led by the science on this. We've had access to the government scientific and medical advisors, and that's helped us form our views. I hope those restrictions can be lifted
in 10 days' time?
As soon as possible, but I want them to be lifted because the medical science says they should be lifted, not simply because the Prime Minister's in a real mess and he's desperately trying to get out of it. So if it's the right thing to lift those restrictions, we will vote to lift those restrictions, but we'll be led by the science, as we always have been, not by the politics of propping up a broken Prime Minister.
Do you accept that the Prime Minister was right not to bring in restrictions in England before Christmas?
Well, he did bring in restrictions. He brought in Plan B. He brought in Plan B. The only reason...
Those were measures, they weren't restrictions, but yes.
Well... Let's not argue about that.
Was he right or not?
He was right to bring in those measures, but the truth is they wouldn't be in place now if the Labour Party hadn't voted for them because he'd lost control of his own party. So the Prime Minister stands in Parliament, says these measures are necessary to protect public health, but he can't get them through in his own vote. So we stepped up in the public interest, showed the leadership that he lacks, voted for those measures, and that is why we have Plan B measures in place at the moment.
But you were pushing for more restrictions at the time before Christmas.
No, we weren't.
Wes Streeting went on. He went on television. He said the First Minister of Wales had a roadmap for Wales. The First Minister of Scotland had set out measures in Scotland. Why is the Prime Minister unable to show the same leadership for England? He said that just 5 days before Christmas.
He wasn't calling for more restrictions, and the fact that the Prime Minister lies and says Wes Streeting was calling for restrictions doesn't mean that we were calling for restrictions. We had access to the government experts, we discussed the evidence, and we voted for the Plan B measures because it was in the national interest to do so. And that's the only reason we've got those measures in place. So this fabrication that we were asking for a lockdown, calling for a lockdown, is a fabrication. It's a bit of a compliment, frankly, to the Labour Party that the Prime Minister and his ministers feel that they've got to fabricate an account of events before Christmas to defend their own position.
It is about the big calls, isn't it? And I mean, also in July, you called for, when the Prime Minister said he was going to lift all the restrictions, you said that was reckless.
I said they shouldn't all be done in one go, and I thought we should have kept, for example, masks for longer, and I think we should have done. But look, those measures, those Plan B measures, are only in place because the Labour Party stepped up and acted in the national interest, the right thing to do according to the evidence.
You're flying high in the polls at the moment. Do you accept what some say, which is that the reason you're doing so well is actually because of the mistakes the Prime Minister is making, not what you are actually doing?
Well, look, I think it's a combination, as it always is. Every time we're behind in the polls, everybody says that's the fault of the Labour Party. Now we're ahead in the polls. Obviously, I'm not going to deny the Prime Minister's in a mess of his own making, but we have now got a new team in place. I had a reshuffle in the autumn. We're out there with strong policies. Yesterday, I was announcing our plan for the NHS on mental health, etc. So whilst the Prime Minister is dithering about rule breaking, we're out there with strong proposals for the country. So it's a mixture of both. I hope now we've got the chance to be heard and we're going to take it.
Sir Keir Starmer, thank you very much for joining us this morning.